In this video, we are going to study the difference between elements and compounds. An element is a fundamental substance that cannot be broken down by chemical means into a simpler substance. It contains only one type of atom. So what is an atom? An atom is the smallest unit of an element that retains its properties and chemical behavior. So when you break an atom, you will not have the property of the element again. So elements are being arranged in a periodic table. And on the periodic table, there are 118 elements which have been discovered presently. But out of these 118 elements, only 88 occur naturally. It means all the other ones have been synthesized in the lab or have been produced through radioactive, so they are not stable. So now that we know the number of elements which exist, let's try to classify them based on their states. In the periodic table, all the elements that exist, only two are liquids: bromine and mercury. These are the two elements which are liquids. And gases, there are 11 elements which exist as gases: hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, chlorine, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and radon. So these are the elements that exist as gases. But all the other elements are metals. So elements have names and they have symbols. Symbols is just a short form of representing these elements. So the first letter of a symbol must always be uppercase or capitalized. Then if it needs a second letter, it must be lowercase. You cannot have two uppercase to represent the symbol of an element, and you cannot have two lowercase to represent the symbol of an element. We'll look at an example. Cobalt is an element. The symbol of cobalt is CO. It requires two letters. The first letter, which is C, is uppercase, and the second letter is lowercase, which is O. If you represent cobalt with two uppercase, it's wrong. That's not the symbol of cobalt. If you represent it with two lowercase, it's wrong. That's not the symbol of cobalt. We'll take an example of an element that has only one letter: nitrogen. Because it has only one letter, the symbol is represented by an uppercase N. We are going to take a look at some elements and their symbols. What you have to understand is that if you have to be successful in chemistry, you have to study the name of elements and their symbols. You have to take the time. Why do I say you have to take the time? Because the name, some of the elements, you cannot predict their symbols from their names. For example, antimony, the symbol is SB. If you don't study, you will not be able to know that the symbol of antimony is SB. If you want to only get it from the name, you might either write AN, which is wrong. Another example is silver. This is silver. The symbol is Ag, very different from the name. You have sodium. The symbol is Na, very different from the name. This is potassium also. The symbol is K, different from the name. So we need to take time to study the name of elements and their symbols. So after we have talked about elements, let's talk a little bit about compounds. A compound is a substance containing two or more elements that are chemically combined in definite proportion by mass. Compounds, unlike elements, can decompose chemically into the elements that make them up. Or we can say into simpler substances because elements are substances. How many types of compounds do we have? We have two types of compounds. Ionic compounds held by ionic bonds and molecular compounds held by covalent bonds. These are the two main types of compounds. So I want to look at some examples of compounds. We have water. This is the formula of water. It's a molecular compound. And why is it a compound? Because it is made up of two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. We have sodium chloride. It's an ionic compound because it's held by ionic bonds. It's made up of two elements, sodium and chlorine. And we have another compound, this time it's a molecular compound, methylamine. It's made up of three elements, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. So these are compounds. Before we end this section, I want us to talk a little bit about molecules and atoms. So we can talk about molecules. What I want us to learn here is that we can have molecules which are elements and molecules which are compounds. For example, this is one molecule of hydrogen. This is an element. Why? Because the atoms which are held here by chemical bonds are the same. So when we write it like this, we are talking about one molecule. But when we separate it, this is two hydrogen atoms. So here we are saying that we have two hydrogen atoms. We have hydrogen sulfide. This is a molecule. Why? Because it contains two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of sulfur. The elements present here are different. So that's why it's a compound. And we have another molecule. This is a molecule of sugar. A molecule of sugar contains 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 1 and 6 atoms of oxygen. Thank you very much for listening.